Hey everyone! So it's been a while since I've done a supplement review, and I thought I would do one since I've been getting so many questions about this specific supplement. It's called the Zahler Prenatal plus DHA, and as you know, I'm very critical of all supplements in general, especially prenatals. So today I'm going to dive into what I like about it, what I don't, and hopefully that helps you make a better decision and to do your own research, talk to your healthcare provider, and pick something that's right for you. So let's dive in. Okay, so I'm on the Zahlers.com website, and this is what the prenatal looks like and the box looks like. So let's go to the supplement facts. To begin, we have 2 soft gels per serving. So that can be a good thing because usually prenatals contain so many ingredients and so many versions, so many vitamins and minerals that it can be actually difficult and a big stress for the body to absorb all at once. So having the ability to break it up into, maybe one at one time during the day and one at another time during the day is actually very helpful. Especially, if you're somebody that doesn't want to take the full dose too, in general. So as well as, let's look at the ingredients. So none of these look weird to me. I'll try to show you. So we have kosher gelatin, vegetable glycerin, purified water, sunflower lecithin, carob, medium chain triglycerides, and yellow beeswax. So none of these ingredients pose too much of a concern to me, except for maybe the beeswax. If you have a bee allergy, that might be concerning or something that you want to avoid. So now let's dive into the individual nutrients. So we have vitamin A, half as beta carotene and half as retinol palmitate. So if you've heard of vitamin A toxicity, retinol palmitate is a synthetic form of vitamin A, and usually all synthetic forms of vitamin A have more of a potential than natural food sources to cause toxicity. Retinol palmitate is a known teratogen, and teratogens are compounds that increase the risk for birth defects. And so, if you're somebody that's worried about vitamin A toxicity, you probably have, you might have heard this from your doctor, but this form of vitamin A, retinol palmitate, is one of the ones that are more likely to contribute to this toxicity. Granted, it makes up 50% of the vitamin A content. Let's look at the other 50%. So that's made of beta carotene. Beta carotene is a precursor to vitamin A. And so it takes a lot of thyroid function and good metabolism to actually be able to make this conversion very efficiently and effective. It also is, actually, I should say, many of us have a gene that makes this conversion very inefficient. So there's a couple of things already we're fighting against here. And so if we're relying on these forms of vitamin A as our only forms of vitamin A, our primary sources of vitamin A, I'm not a big fan. So let's just leave it at that. I should also say, beta carotene and retinol palmitate are really going to be the only kinds of vitamin A that you find in any prenatals. You will never find a natural form of vitamin A in a prenatal just because it's really difficult to extract that from food. So, if this were me, I would be weary of the retinol palmitate, but I would also be trying to get more real whole food sources of vitamin A. But, there is that potential of toxicity, which is more so possible because of the synthetic vitamin A in this prenatal. So, it's kind of makes it a little bit difficult to make sure you're getting what you need. So I don't like so far what I see nutrient-wise. So let's keep going. Next, we have vitamin C as calcium ascorbate. So this means that it's ascorbic acid bound to calcium, so a mineral. It's usually, this type is, utilized oftentimes when someone has a gut problem or their gut is more sensitive. So this type of ascorbic acid is better utilized by these kinds of people. I personally, as you know, I'm not a big fan of ascorbic acid. because it depletes copper and it actually depletes our real vitamin C. So this is a no-go for me. It's also important to keep in mind that if you take calcium ascorbate in high amounts, that it is bound to another mineral. So you have to keep that in mind because minerals also operate in ratios. So if you're taking a high amount of calcium, that is going to impact other mineral partners as well as anything in here, So if we're taking a high amount of calcium ascorbate, which, this is not too high, but I would say it's high enough, it could impact our magnesium. So that's just one example, but I thought I would point that out. Next, we have vitamin D3. So this is the correct form if you are going to supplement, but as you know, I'm not a big fan of vitamin D supplementation. It can deplete minerals and it depletes liver retinol, which, all that said, at the end of the day, it can increase oxidative stress and the ability for iron to overtake the body. So I'm not a big fan of having anything with vitamin D3, but I would say that, based on other experts in the field, 2000 IU is a probably the cutoff from what some experts would say. For example, Hector DeLuca, this is his cutoff. He's the godfather of vitamin D, and this is the cutoff for safety in his opinion. There are others that say, even as little as 400 IU can cause calcification of the kidneys. So it really depends on the person. And if you're going to supplement vitamin D, it's really important to understand what not only your storage vitamin D levels are, but your active vitamin D levels are. Because your active vitamin D levels, that's what really gives you all the fame, or that's what really does all the famous things that vitamin D is known for. And, we only look at storage vitamin D when we look at tests. So the way that we sort of look at this nutrient, which is really a hormone as a whole, is very inaccurate. Looking at vitamin D in the storage form is just like not the best picture of what's actually going on. No matter how you cut it, no matter what studies you're looking at, we really need to be focused on the ratio of storage to active, and that is rarely the case. So not a fan of this, in my opinion. Then we have vitamin E as alpha tocopherol. Alpha tocopherol is great, but we want a mixed compound. So we want mixed tocopherols, not just alpha. We want gamma, etc. So I would be looking for mixed tocopherols, not just alpha. Vitamin E is a complex, and we should be taking it that way. I do like vitamin E. I'm a big fan of it. It just needs to be whole food, and from what I can tell, I do think this is a whole food vitamin E source, but it's only alpha tocopherol, so it's kind of missing the mark for me here. That's my opinion on vitamin E here. Then we have vitamin K1. So vitamin K1 is really important for blood clotting. Vitamin K2 is really important for getting calcium into the bones. They have various functions, but those are kind of how I would describe their primary functions. So we have vitamin K1 and K2. It's actually rare to find a prenatal that has vitamin K2 as well. So I'm actually pretty impressed that they've included this here. I will say, anecdotally, vitamin K2 is not as well absorbed as vitamin K2-4. So here we have vitamin K2, but it's in the K27 form. Vitamin K2-4 is actually a bit better absorbed. So that said, I still am impressed that they have both here. So next we have thiamine from benfotiamine, and benfotiamine is a chemical that the body needs to convert into thiamine. I actually, don't know as much about it as I would like to, but I do know that it's a chemical that gets converted by the body into thiamine. Just in that mechanism, I'm not a big fan because it, requires the body to work harder. From my understanding, thiamine pyrophosphate is the active form of the B vitamin that you would probably want to look for. So not sure about this one in particular. All right, then we have riboflavin from riboflavin 5-phosphate sodium. So my understanding is that this is a very active form, bioavailable form of riboflavin. But again, it is synthetic, so it's less than ideal in my eyes. But it does provide, the daily, 100% of the daily value. Then we have niacin as niacinamide. That is a good form of niacin, despite its synthetic sourcing. Then we have vitamin B6 from pyridoxal 5-phosphate. That is also the active form of B6 that you want, and B6 is really important, especially in pregnancy. A lot of women who are deficient in this can feel morning sickness, and it's also really important for fertility in general. I think that's why we probably have a little bit more here. And then we have folate as L5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, calcium. So it's likely bound to calcium, and it's methylated. So that's really important because, I can go into a whole hour-long conversation, probably much longer, and I'll definitely be talking about this in my upcoming course. I have a whole section on this. But you want methylated folate if you're going to be supplementing folate. That's just the best, most absorbable form. So that's really good to have here. Again, it is synthetic. I would prefer it from food, but, I will let this pass for this exercise. Vitamin B12 as methylcobalamin. This is also methylated, and that's very important as well. Just makes it so much easier on the body to absorb. So that's really good, and there's a pretty decent amount. That obviously nods to its importance in, building a baby. Then we have biotin, and that's also very important. I'll be talking about that more. It's a very unique situation in pregnancy. I think that most people don't realize. But yeah, and then we have pantothenic acid. This is vitamin B5, and this is from calcium D-pantothenate. This is a pretty good form. I mean, as good as synthetic will probably get. It's bound to calcium because it helps stabilize the B vitamin, which can be degraded and lost. So there's that. Then we have calcium from Calcareous marine algae, Lithothamnion, aquamin. I believe it's derived from seaweed, so, that's a little weird to me. I'm not a huge fan of marine-derived, or plant-based derived nutrients, just because, there are so many inhibitors that plants have that it's difficult to know if these inhibitors were properly taken care of when processing. I'm not sure, but we have 100 milligrams here. I'll touch on a couple of ratios as well later on. Then we have iron as ferrous bisglycinate chelate, ferroshell. There's a lot of trademark stuff in here. We have 27 milligrams. So, most people that are not knowledgeable about iron will probably think, oh, that's enough, or maybe that's not enough. But me coming from the Root Cause Protocol Institute background, I know that body has an iron recycling system that can recycle iron 24 milligrams a day or more. So, in my opinion, taking supplemental iron, it's just going to create more problems, deplete copper, and cause a lot of oxidative stress. We need copper to manage iron. That's really what it comes down to. We shouldn't be taking tons of iron. That's not the way the body works. That's not the way nature works. Also, I would like to point out too that there are a lot of iron-free prenatals for the fact that iron can also interfere with calcium absorption. Of course, supplement companies don't even acknowledge other issues in terms of absorption with other minerals because all of them operate as partners, and they can antagonize each other or agonize each other. So that's one of the funny ones because there are so many other things that can also interfere with calcium absorption or magnesium absorption or zinc absorption or copper, but we still like to put all of these nutrients in one pill. That aside, again, I will just go back to iron. and just say that I don't believe that this is a good thing here, having so much of it in this prenatal. Then we have iodine from potassium iodide. I mean, that's really the standard. That's what you're going to get. So I, of course, prefer to get iodine from food, but iodine is rarely in prenatals. So if you are someone that, is looking to get a high quality prenatal, iodine is one of the key and essential nutrients for preconception that you really want. So this is actually a good thing that it's in here, in my opinion, if we're looking at, if we're calling good as like well-rounded and kind of holistic in a sense. Then we have magnesium from magnesium citrate or magnesium oxide. These are actually very poorly absorbed forms of magnesium. I would prefer to see magnesium threonate or magnesium glycinate or magnesium bisglycinate, but of course, those are more expensive. So what you get with a prenatal is, you get a couple of really good nutrients and then the rest are all pretty much crap or like poor forms because it's expensive to create an affordable prenatal. So it's kind of, the company has to take shortcuts where it can, and it looks like magnesium, they've chosen that. So then we have zinc from zinc glycinate chelate. I'm not a big fan of zinc supplementation either, as you guys know. So, we have zinc here though, and it's a pretty good form or very absorbable form. The reason I would say that I don't like zinc is because it interferes with copper absorption, and it can also create this sort of bodily reaction where the body tries to bind up excess metals. And what happens is the body will bind to copper much more potently than zinc, actually 1,000 times stronger. So copper gets the brunt of it. And so that's another way that it can create imbalance. But zinc is one of the things that a prenatal has to check off, so it's here. And then we have selenium from L-selenomethionine. This is actually a pretty decent form. It's bound to methionine, which is an amino acid, and it can be better absorbed in the gut. Then we have copper, which from copper glycinate chelate. I am not a fan of copper supplementation, even though I do talk about copper a lot. Taking copper, without the proper cofactors, it can create problems. So, that said, it's another essential nutrient that a prenatal has to check off. So I would say that this is a pretty decent form, although I really don't promote supplementation of copper. It's hard to say how someone will react, and there's a big question mark here. But it does have copper, and hopefully it'll balance out zinc. I would say it doesn't have enough copper to balance zinc, but that's just based on my research. More commonly, I think people would probably think this does. Then we have manganese, another essential nutrient. Manganese glycinate, probably very absorbable form. And then we have chromium, also very important, chromium picolinate, also good form. And then molybdenum as molybdenum glycinate. I like glycinate, so I would say that's probably a good form as well. Then we have DHA. So this is algae oil derived DHA. As you also know, I'm not a big fan of fish oil supplementation. I think that it's like putting lightning in a bottle, regardless of what side of the arguments you are on. So DHA is a very, very, very delicate fatty acid. And even Lily Nichols, who is an authority on preconception nutrition, prenatal nutrition, she recommends not getting a prenatal with DHA and other nutrients in it because DHA can react with so many things. And if you have read my post about mega trans fats, DHA plus, or omega-3 fatty acids plus iron is a recipe for mega trans fats, which is, just creates huge oxidative stress. It can cause lots of issues. So basically what you're getting in this prenatal, because there's DHA and nutrients like iron that can oxidize very easily, is kind of like an oxidized chemical soup. And honestly, that probably might be why the capsules are black, but I don't know. So that'd be my guess. Then we have choline from choline bitartrate. This is a relatively cheap form of choline. I much prefer to get choline from food, but that said, there is research that says that this form of choline may not be as well absorbed in the brain as other forms of choline. So choline is extremely important for brain function and brain development in babies. So if you're taking a prenatal for this reason to benefit the baby, I would say that this form of choline is really not achieving your goal. So just, a note there. And then lutein is an antioxidant. That's very interesting that they've included this. There is a lot of research that does show that it's very beneficial, and babies do have, better growth and development from it. There's a couple of things that I could name, but I don't necessarily think that we need to be supplementing these specific antioxidants. I would probably want to see a couple of others or just try to get this from food. But hey, that is definitely an interesting nutrient that I don't see very often on prenatals. So who knows? This could maybe be a good thing. Okay, so let's talk about ratios really quickly. Most of the ratios I focus on are fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. A and D does have a specific ratio, but because this is synthetic and D is coming from a synthetic supplement here, it makes it a little hard to contextualize the ratio. So I think talking about it would be a moot point here. Let's move down to minerals. So iron and copper, in my opinion, a little high iron to copper, also a little high zinc to copper ratio, in my opinion, based on what I've seen work for people. That said, there are certain minerals here that shouldn't be supplemented at all, these three included, but that's just my opinion. So I do think that the ratios are a little bit off. I would prefer to not see iron in here at all. Then we have magnesium and calcium, which is another common ratio. The calcium here is a bit high versus the magnesium, especially considering the magnesium is such a poor form. So that, is kind of that would get a bad rating from me in this regard too. So those are kind of the ratios that I would focus on here, given the minerals in this prenatal. I don't see any potassium or sodium, so hopefully we'd be getting enough to balance these minerals that are in here. But potassium and sodium are rarely included in prenatals, so it's hard to talk about that. I would also like to touch on the RDAs here as well really quickly. So for some of these nutrients, this prenatal actually does not contain 100%, and I find this to be a good thing because they're exercising a little more caution, around some of the nutrients that could potentially sort of lead to toxicity, such as vitamin A in a synthetic form. All of these nutrients are pretty much all synthetic, so that's really important because synthetics are more likely to lead to toxicity, and they can actually take up receptor space for the real thing, which Dr. Catherine Shanahan talks about in her book, Deep Nutrition. So, having 100% of the RDA is not necessarily a good thing, especially if you're consuming some of these things in, plentifully. But I should also caveat that and say RDAs are only based on survival. They're not based on the levels that you need to thrive. They're kind of based on preventing deficiency. So, in a sense, like I wouldn't want anyone to think taking this prenatal would sort of be the end all be all of like supplementation and meeting your adequate nutrition needs as well. So based on the fact that RDAs are set for preventing deficiency and based on the fact that these sort of levels here are not exactly at 100% for some of them, I would say you should probably be making sure that you're getting adequate amounts of these nutrients through food regardless. So that's really important. And again, synthetics are not ideal in my opinion. This is primarily heavily synthetic. So that's something that I wanted to touch on as well. And overall, this is a very interesting prenatal. It does provide, some unique nutrients that you don't often find in other prenatals, like choline and like, let's see, what else did I say? Like choline, like lutein, which is a very interesting one, like K2. But at the end of the day, based on just how nutrients interact, I would say that the DHA plus everything is probably not a good thing, and that it's creating the potential for oxidative stress. And if you know what megatrans fats are, or if you know what oxidized fats do, they wreak havoc. They can cause a lot of problems. They deplete certain nutrients. They can cause inflammation. And so, my opinion, maybe if the DHA wasn't in this prenatal and you were taking it separately, if that's something that you wanted to do, maybe it would be okay. But the fact that they're combined is just look at the capsules. That's kind of how I feel. It's like a toxic soup. So in my opinion, I would probably stay away from this. It's definitely not one that I would, you couldn't pay me to take. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I kind of, I can tend to go off on a tangent sometimes with specific nutrients. I will be reviewing a couple of the top prenatals that I see, the most common ones that I see in my practice, the most common ones that women reach out to me with questions about in my upcoming course, which is going to be launching in May, crossing my fingers, with Dr. Britt Harmon, the preconception PT. So we'll be diving into a couple more exactly like this, really getting into the nitty gritty, really going into the sourcing, ratios, all of that stuff to really give you an idea so that when you look for a prenatal for yourself, if that's something that you really strongly feel you want to do, you know what to look for. So hope this was helpful, and yeah, stay tuned for more supplement reviews in the future. Thanks for watching. I cut myself off there. Thank you for watching, and if you do want to get updates on the preconception course that myself and Dr. Britt are putting together, feel free to go to the link in my bio and drop your email address in, and we'll keep you updated with the latest on the course, timing, potential discounts to come, etc. So thanks again. Bye.